You know what's fascinating? Everyone's always talking about African solutions for African problems, but when a country actually does it, somehow the world gets real quiet. Let me tell you about Eritrea. It's like that friend who decided to do things their own way and everybody thought they were crazy, but now they're low-key crushing it. And when I say crushing it, I mean really crushing it. Despite facing challenges that would make most countries throw in the towel. It's like they're playing a video game on hard mode, but instead of rage quitting, they're setting high scores left and right. Picture this. Eritrea gets hit with UN sanctions, and instead of falling apart, they basically said, watch us work. It's like when your parents cut off your allowance thinking you'll come crawling back, but instead you start a successful lemonade empire. Now, and not just any lemonade empire. We're talking about the kind that makes your neighbors wonder if you've got a secret recipe. The beautiful thing about Eritrea's approach is how they turned every challenge into an opportunity. You know those people who can take a jar of random leftovers and somehow make a gourmet meal? That's Eritrea on a national scale. They took what they had and made something remarkable. What makes this story even better is how they approached agriculture. Most countries would be like, send us aid. But Eritrea, they looked at their dry land and said, challenge accepted. They created these innovative irrigation systems. It's like they turned their farming into a real-life version of Minecraft, but instead of building virtual worlds, they're feeding real people. And let me tell you about their soil conservation methods. It's not just about growing food. It's about making sure their grandchildren's grandchildren can grow food too. They're playing the long game, like someone who plants a tree knowing they'll never sit in its shade. That's some next-level thinking right there. Their approach to food security is like having a really strict budget planner who's also really good at finding deals. They're not just growing food, they're growing smart. They've developed drought-resistant crops, implemented water-saving techniques, and created storage systems that would make any prepper proud. And let's talk about their healthcare system. You know how some countries have doctors only in big cities? Eritrea said, nah, we're bringing healthcare to everyone. They're training local health workers in remote areas. It's like Uber Eats, but instead of delivering food, they're delivering medical care. And it's working. Their maternal mortality rates have dropped significantly. That's what I call a real delivery service. The way they've structured their healthcare system is genius. It's like they've created a medical version of a franchise model. Every community, no matter how small, gets access to basic healthcare. They're training local people to be first responders, creating a network of healthcare providers that's more extensive than some delivery pizza chains. But here's where it gets really interesting. Education. They've made it accessible, even in the most remote areas. It's like they created Netflix for education, but instead of asking, are you still watching? They're asking, are you still learning? And the answer is yes, because they're mixing modern education with indigenous knowledge. It's like having your grandmother's wisdom with a Wikipedia upgrade. They've got these mobile schools that follow nomadic communities. How cool is that? It's like having a food truck, but instead of serving tacos, they're serving knowledge. And they're not just teaching reading and writing. They're teaching practical skills that people can use in their daily lives. The technical and vocational training programs they've set up are like master classes in self-reliance. They're not just teaching people how to do jobs, they're teaching them how to create jobs. It's like that saying about teaching someone to fish, except they're teaching people how to start their own fishing company. The way they handle their resources is brilliant too. When it comes to mining, most African countries have had a rough deal. It's usually like having a birthday party where someone else blows out your candles and eats your cake. But Eritrea, they figured out how to work with international partners while keeping control of their resources. They're basically saying, you can come to the party, but we're keeping the cake knife. ... Their approach to international cooperation is like being the host of a dinner party, where everyone brings a dish, but you're still in charge of the menu. They're not against working with other countries. They just want to make sure they're not getting served leftovers, while everyone else enjoys the main course. And don't even get me started on their environmental conservation. They're out here planting trees and preserving soil like they're preparing for a post-apocalyptic garden competition. But seriously, their commitment to environmental protection is remarkable. While some countries are still debating if climate change is real, Eritrea is already several seasons into their reforestation series. Their environmental policies are like a masterclass in sustainable development. They've got these community-based conservation programs that make protecting the environment everyone's business. It's like they've turned environmental protection into a national sport, and everyone's competing to be the MVP. What's really powerful is their approach to women's empowerment. They're ensuring women participate in everything: politics, education, business. It's like they understood that using only half your population is like trying to clap with one hand. It makes no sound, and looks pretty ridiculous. The way they've integrated women into every sector of society isn't just progressive. It's smart economics. They've figured out that gender equality isn't just about fairness. It's about maximizing your nation's potential. It's like finally using both processors in a dual-core system. Suddenly, everything runs better. But here's the thing that really gets me. Despite all these achievements, mainstream media barely talks about it. It's like Eritrea is that straight-A student who also plays 3 instruments and volunteers at the shelter, but somehow never gets mentioned at the school assembly. Maybe it's because their success doesn't fit the traditional narrative about African development. It's like they're writing a different story altogether. One where the protagonist doesn't need a savior, but instead saves themselves. And let's be honest, that's not the story many people are used to hearing. The most important lesson here isn't just about Eritrea's success. It's about how they've shown there's more than one way to develop a nation. They've proved that you don't need to follow the traditional playbook to win the game. It's like they wrote their own rules and ended up creating a better game altogether. Think about it. While everyone else was copying answers from the back of the book, Eritrea was writing its own textbook. They've shown that when we talk about African solutions for African problems, it's not just a catchphrase. It's a real, viable path forward. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It's not just about one country's success. It's about showing the world that sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't the conventional way. It's about having the courage to say, thanks for the advice, but we've got this. Quote, ... So the next time someone tells you there's only one way to develop a nation, remember Eritrea. Remember that sometimes the best solution isn't the one in the manual. It's the one you write yourself. Because at the end of the day, true independence isn't just about political freedom. It's about having the courage to chart your own course, even when everyone else thinks you're reading the map upside down. And you know what? Maybe that's exactly what Africa needs more of. Countries brave enough to write their own stories, draw their own maps, and prove that success doesn't have to look like what the rest of the world expects it to look like. Because if Eritrea's taught us anything, it's that the best solutions often come from the people who understand the problems firsthand.